Surrounded by iPhone users in my family and extended family, I'm very familiar with the iPhone 6, even putting it as the #1 phone in the world in a recent phone show top 5. When asked by a normal phone user as to what smartphone to buy, recommending a 64 gig iPhone 6 was almost the default, budget permitting, and with less chance of the user coming back later to complain than on any other device or platform. And now we have the 6S, the biennial internals update from Apple. And true to form, the only way you can tell that this is a different iPhone, short of turning on, is that it's slightly heavier, around 14 grams, thanks to the extra componentry in the display, of which more later, and the denser aluminium used in its construction. The former is to enable a whole new mode of interaction, the latter to fix the apparent mechanical weaknesses in the original 6. Anyone remember Bendergate? Heavier is better though. The iPhone 6 always felt too light and insubstantial to me, and this device now feels more solid. Apple ships the 6S and 6S Plus in 16 gig, 64 and 128 GB variants. If there's one thing I've learned in my years reviewing smartphones, it's that you can never have too much memory, both in terms of storage, no expansion card support here of course, in which case the 10 gig or so available out of the box on the 16 GB iPhone is a complete travesty. A month of use and a couple of medium game installs and the poor buyer will be sobbing into their empty bank account. The 16 GB versions are purely there to act as a marketing push to get everyone to buy the 64 gig version instead, which is fine, since in 2015 this is about the optimum storage the average iPhone enthusiast might need. But you do have to budget for this in the first place. The other sort of memory is RAM, of course, and even though Apple hates mentioning the number, the iPhone 6S does come with 2 GB of RAM, double that in the iPhone 6. Now with iOS, RAM is used so efficiently that you won't notice most of the time, but the more advanced interface in iOS 9, the higher resolution camera, the greater use of biometrics, all help eat up the extra RAM and ensure that the user gets a smooth ride from start to finish. Now, take more RAM, a faster processor, Apple's A9, and a smaller battery at 1715 milliamp hours, and you'd expect that battery life would be significantly worse. Yet, optimizations in the chipset and the software mean that power lasts much as it did with the original 6. Enough to get you through a modestly heavy day, but with little left to spare. It's a pity there's no real margin of error here, though, from our experience over the last year when heading out for an intensive day, say at an event, taking lots of photos and relying on mobile data, the iPhone 6 was always out of power by tea time, and we relied on using a Mophie case from the start or bringing along an emergency charger. The iPhone 6S is much in the same ballpark, though the good news is that the existing Mophie accessory for the 6 still fits the very slightly thicker 6S. As a fan of the original iPhone 4 and 4S steel design language, and then gradually coming to like and appreciate the aluminium version here on the 5 and 5S, I find the pebble-like, all-curved unibody here approach on the 6 range somewhat boring and generic. In fairness, this is because there are now so many iPhone copycats. A classic example is the ZTE-made Vodafone Smart Ultra 6 here in the UK, which is an iPhone 6 Plus in terms of form factor and cosmetics, yet made in cheap plastic and not premium metal. One other drawback of the iPhone 6 design language is that all the curves allied to the smooth aluminium make it insanely easy to drop. You need to keep this in a form-fitting case of some kind, adding both grip and protection. The iPhone 6S display is nice and clear. The raw resolution of 750p is now looking rather low compared to the 1080p and beyond in competing flagships, but it's absolutely fine at 4.7 inches here, certainly to my eyes. Around the back, the camera looks the same but has been upgraded, now at 12 megapixel resolution, enough to do more software tricks and a figure which looks more competitive in a world where Android flagships costing quite a bit less are routinely quoting 16 megapixels or more. Now, megapixels aren't everything, of course, but 12 megapixels with a 2015 sensor produces clarity and noise levels equivalent to those of an 8 megapixel 2013 sensor, but with more detail, so it's a natural move for Apple. I've been testing the 6S camera against the best of the Android and Windows Phone world, and it's good, but not class leading. The LG G4 and recent Samsungs take those honours. Here are some example photos in a variety of light conditions. Now, one innovation for the 6S is live photos, here shown off on wallpaper, presumably using expertise from Ari Partanen, who was responsible for Living Images over on the Windows Phone platform for Nokia before moving to Apple. The implementation is very similar, with a conventional JPEG photo and a lower resolution video file, 1080p and MOV format, packaged together to give some video context to the moment the photo was taken. While camera is open and live mode is on, 1080p video is taken continually, and then the appropriate 1.5 second snatches from before and after the photo taking moment are built into the MOV file. Then, when viewing the photo later on in Photos on the phone or on your Mac, or even as wallpaper on the phone, pressing hard using 3D Touch, of which more in a moment, plays the underlying movie and helps the image, quote, come alive. It's an effective system, though note that you have to remember to stay still for 1.5 seconds after taking each live photo, otherwise your droop back to a rest position is also captured. In addition, there's no way to get to any of these movie frames should you prefer them to the actual photo. The now obsolete HTC One over on Android a few years ago had a great system whereby photos were being taken all the time in the background, and you spot a cute moment and you tap the shutter button. Even if you're a fraction late, you know that the photos were grabbed before you hit the button, and you're all set up. The system here seems similar at first glance, and you can see the moment you want on the screen as part of the live photos. You just can't get at it. Well, in fact, you could extract the MOV, the movie on your Mac, and then use software to pull out the appropriate 2 megapixel frame, but it's not trivial. In practice, live photos work best when you've got some control over the environment and subject. People posing for a photo are perfect, with some ad hoc expressions before and after the smile, as are natural ambient scenes, water, branches in the wind, that sort of thing. Stick any of these as your lock screen wallpaper and hard press to enjoy the animation. The digital stabilization here, for example, when capturing video is very good, though OIS would of course improve things further and also allow longer, steadier exposures and low light when shooting stills. Maybe this will come for 2016's iPhone 7. Video can be set to 4K at 30 frames a second as here, and quality is pretty good, with excellent software stabilization to counter hand wobbles thanks to all the image processing power under the hood. Although there's no way, at least out of the box, to extract 8 megapixel stills from 4K footage, you can grab stills as you go in real time in time-honoured fashion with the lower capture icon on the camera viewfinder. Between live photos, a terrifically fast burst mode, maybe you can just hear that, and photos while shooting super high resolution video, it's hard to think of any use cases other than my archetypal low light party mode where the iPhone 6S hasn't got imaging covered. iOS 9 is very well known by now, of course, since it's a free upgrade for everything from the iPhone 4S onwards. Coming to the iPhone from Android, the static home screens do take a little getting used to, but the Today drop-down view does a great job of providing context for, as the name suggests, your day ahead. And it's customizable, even though it's not as extensive as Google Now. As the application scene is second to none on iOS, with the latest games the most polished applications created by developers drawn to the halo of glory that surrounds Apple's iPhones. Need a utility to do something? An iOS developer will have created it already. Now, Apple's big innovation for iOS 9 on the iPhone 6 and 6S Plus is 3D Touch. Essentially, some applications support detection of how hard you're pressing on the layers in the touchscreen glass, then offer new views or actions. In a simple case on the application screen, it can offer a right-click style context launch system, for example on the camera icon, take selfie, record video, and so on. Within an application, it can be used to provide depth to the control you have over content on screen, such as peeking into mail messages and then popping them onto the screen as if you tapped on them in the first place. Little of which saves much time, to be honest, and in fact you lose time at first, pressing in hard on a multitude of applications and screens which do absolutely nothing because Apple and the developers haven't coded them yet to support 3D Touch. However, there are glimpses of genuine usefulness here, with the realization that you can drag a peeked view on something up, down, left or right, depending on how the application has been coded, to mark it read, delete it, share it, and so on. Even more usefully, something of a revelation is that you can press hard when the standard iOS keyboard is on screen in any application, and the keypad turns into a laptop trackpad for accurate cursor positioning. This is jaw-dropping when you first try it and genuinely useful. Finally, a 3D touch hard press on the left-hand side of the screen brings up the iOS 9 multitasking carousel, which can then be swiped into full view and navigated as usual. This is pretty intuitive and more satisfying than a double press of the home button, which I constantly worry about wearing out. It's still very early days though for 3D touch, and there are more user interface misses than hits with the technology. But the situation will improve with every iOS update and with every application update. So I'm optimistic that this can rise to become a smartphone staple in flagships, at least by 2015. In terms of durability, the jury's still out, mind you. On my brand new review iPhone 6s here, pressing hard in most of the middle section of the phone produced a mechanical clicking sound unrelated to 3D touch, and it's clear that there are significant challenges involved in making a phone chassis and screen strong enough to withstand force touching day after day for several years. Expect to see complaints of clicks and creaks from iPhone 6s users in the coming months. Another innovation of Apple's is worth mentioning here, pioneering really fast and practical fingerprint recognition in smartphones. The sensor in the home button of the 5S was good, but speed and accuracy has been massively improved, and recognition is now so fast that I kept having problems from a locked 6S, there we go, getting through to Siri because I left my thumb on the button a fraction of a second too long. In other words, the 6S electronics was waking up, scanning, authenticating me, unlocking the interface, and still having time to then count most of my thumb time as an attempt to long press the home button because I wanted Siri. Ha! Another of Apple's hold it back for the more expensive model moments comes when you realise that the home screen only works in portrait on the iPhone 6s, whereas you can use it in landscape as well on the 6s Plus. If you're switching between applications that are all landscape, Safari, Photos, a game and so on, it's a real pain to have to keep rotating the phone. There's also Hey Siri. That's on many other smartphones these days. You can now interrogate this without touching the device and without it being on charge, as you had to do with the iPhone 6. The A9 chipset here includes the low-power DSP needed to be listening for a particular audio pattern, your rendition of Hey Siri, and then kick the main processor and OS into life. And it works brilliantly. Here's a demo. Hey Siri, how many inches in a mile?
1 mile is 63,360 inches.
Each person's Hey Siri rendition is recorded and analysed several times during the initial setup, meaning that in a noisy room there's less chance of one person's Hey Siri kicking off every other iPhone in the room. Should iPhone 6 owners upgrade? Probably not. The S model has a litany of improvements, but unless one of them leaps out at you, then I'd suggest waiting until the iPhone 7. By then, 3D touch will have been perfected and will have vastly greater application support. But certainly anyone with an old iPhone 5 or 5S is overdue for a look at Apple's current vision for the future of smartphones. The 6S certainly isn't perfect, but it's pointing the way very clearly to a perfect 7. Whoa, coming from Apple next year.